This is Kal Kat, the Kal Kat's turn. This is a review of Thor: Love and Thunder. Yeah, sort of a sequel to the other Thor movies in the Marvel universe. We have a opening scene with Gore, who's going to become the God Butcher, his daughter, and they're dying in the desert, a la Star Trek V. and the daughter dies, and the other guy wanders into an oasis left by his god, and then the god has slayed the guy who had the Necro Sword, and now he's like, he takes it and kills the god guy. Even though he was an omnipotent god guy, he would know that was going to happen. Also, how come the Necro Sword is referred to at the end of the post-credit sequence of the Eternals, with the voice of Venom in the background and stuff, and not the Venom one. The Venom one was the other one. That's some other voice, like a guy, maybe it's Blade or someone else in the background going, "Oh, the sword is magical." Ah. It's like, if the Gore already had it, then why is it in a box? Is it another sword? I'm not sure. Is it the Dark Saber? Yeah. Gore has it. Different realms in the story that look like album covers. We have comic book covers as well. You get to see like the music is mainly WMG, UMG, Universal, so we can't use any of it, of course. Yeah, they once again have like 80s and 90s rock hits going on. Thor is hanging out with the Guardians of the Galaxy. There's a weird narration. I think it's Taika Waititi narrating it, explaining what's going on. The God Bod training sequence and all that. We're reintroduced to Jane Foster, who is not the Jane Foster from the fictional adventures, but I just didn't know at the time that I wrote that in the 90s. I was not familiar with the Thor comics, so I was not familiar with that. I didn't know anything about that. I just called her that because Jane Foster Child after Baby Jane, the song. I just made it completely out of. I just assembled, Foster Jane, Foster Child Jane. I had no. She's not supposed to be Thor. So yeah, I had no idea that character was that. Which would be like using Mary Jane from Spider-Man and not realizing it. I would have known that, which is interesting. In the 90s, I wouldn't have used that. Mary Jane. It'd be like if I used Dinah Prince. I would have known that too, but not Jane Foster. So, yeah, the Jane Foster thing. Yeah. So anyway, Jane Foster in this version is after the Mighty Thor comic with the in which Jane Foster is Thor. It's later. It's the 2000s, which was Thor. She's just his girlfriend in the earlier one, 70s and 80s. The Guardians did have an adventure. The Guardians of the Galaxy comic book. Yeah, we have Thor. So Jane Foster's character is dying of cancer. That's in the comic book. Yeah, and so the Thor powers give her powers. In this one, they wanted a ticking timer to the end of the story. So, spoilers. So they said, "Oh no, it's actually hurting her." But Milner repairs it. It's making it worse. Space powers are making it worse. Even though apparently in other Marvel characters, such as the Hulk, the gamma rays that would normally destroy him would actually make him the Hulk. They're never quite clear on how that works. Yeah. If it genetically superpowers you, wouldn't it just heal everything? Like it did in the comic book. So they did change that. In the comic book, the Thor the hammer's keeping her alive. In the comic book. Yeah. So briefly went through the comic book. For the research of this movie, which has been apparently in production for 2 years. Yeah, so Natalie Portman, who who was in Star Wars and in that Black Swan movie, and apparently married the choreographer from the Black Swan, and they had a kid or something. I don't know if she's still married to him, but yeah. And there's this little Moppet sort of character in the beginning. You know he's going to come up again later. The Gore's daughter, who's called Love. You can tell that hippies wrote the original concept of this. A lot of hippies analogies, more so than Asgardians. Some connection to the Valkyries being like the Wonder Woman characters as well. So only because they're the kind of similar. I think the Wonder Woman ones, the Isle of Man ones, are more Greek, but but these other ones are more like Norsemen, Viking Norsemen people. It's a little different, but it's similar. It's Amazon type of thing going on. That Amazon, not Amazon over here, but Amazon over there. But yeah. So we have a bizarre visit to Zeus and his group up there and floating in the sky somehow, similar to the other realms. Never mentioned before. Zeus and the other gods are up there, even though I thought they all killed each other in the Greek mythology. It's odd. Anyway. Yeah, I didn't think they were still around after the Romans took over and messed with them. And Zeus became Jupiter, and and all that. But anyways, so Zeus is apparently still around, shooting lightning bolts. Lightning and thunder is related, and yeah, of course. But yeah. Well, they gotta defeat the God Butcher. The God Butcher guy goes to New Asgard, which I'm assuming is in Australia somewhere. Because it looks like Australia or New Zealand area. More so than it looks like anywhere else. Well, it could be somewhere else, but I think it's Australia. Because I think they filmed down there. Down under. Or Taika Waititi, of course, is the director. So they filmed down there. And we have... that's when we meet Thor and Mighty Thor. Because apparently Natalie Portman, the Majorcan called to her and revived her. There was a scene earlier where she shows the guy from Dark World, the Einstein Rosenbridge ruining her book that she published about space and time. She had a book published. Why her third accomplice would be a fan of her book. Completely out of the blue is kind of weird, and he does say that. Well, he wrecked your own book. Trying to show me what an Einstein Rosenbridge was. But yeah, and the girl from WandaVision, but also from Dark World is back. But not WandaVision girl, the assistant with the glasses. Also, there's a performance of Thor's antics by this theater group going on. There's a lot of things going on. And you have Gore sends his army of shadow creatures. Of course, shadow creatures. Of course, right out of not out of the comic books, but out of Silly in Space, and a little bit of Babylon 5, but other things. It's from other things. The spider creatures or whatever. So you have they're gonna go on a quest. The Gore steals the children and puts them in a cage. Politics, yeah, clearly what they're referencing there. We also have because this was written in 2018, 2019, somewhere around there. And there's politics in there, but it's thinly veiled as it's the alien Gore guy that put them there. And it's not really. It's just guys in cages. See, yeah, we know what you're doing. Marvel, it's messed up. So yeah, so that's how you do it. You just kind of put it there and subvert their expectations. Don't reference it directly. There's a rock creature that apparently was mated to another rock creature. It was a male rock creature, and that's freaking out some of the alt-right. But I think the cage part should freak them out more, because that's something they did with the immigrants stories. They put the immigrants in kids in cages. The alt-right did that under that other administration. They did that. So that should freak them out more than, the rock guy's gay. Because the gay rock guy just goes over like, Well, how does he even have a gender? He's technically an amorphous rock that can reproduce using lava. It's like he's not really gay. He's a creature of some kind. He's alien. Come on. Are they really that bent out of shape about that? Come on. And then and the Valkyries from a land that are all women, Themyscira type of Wonder Woman land. You see. Oh no, we don't want that either. It's like, guys, it's a comic book. Get over it. So we have. So that was their objections. Not the kitchen cages, which is be more of an objection, but rather, no. There's a gay character somewhere. They blink and you miss it. He mentions this after he's been destroyed and turned into a head, so just ahead of him, just left. So yeah, why are they? I guess they're up in arms because the Cage story is their fault and they don't want to be reminded of it, and the other one isn't. Maybe that's it. Yeah. But you think they'd mention it? Why would Gore do the things he's doing in the movie? I mentioned the redemption arc and the hunt and the Boba Fett thing, but also the redemption arc in this one being in Mando, and in the other one, and the redemption arc in the Ben Kenobi movie being for the enemy villain characters being weird. It's weird here too, because like his. It's weird for the same reason that it was in the Kenobi movie, really. Kenobi series. And the other two. Apparently Disney doesn't know how to do a villain redemption arc. They just don't. This villain is irredeemable if he's killing people, celestial beings and things. If he's able to do that. And at the end, his spoilery end is kind of out of nowhere, out of left field. It's similar to the ending in the DC movies with Batman v Superman discovering that their mother's names were Martha. It's almost that silly. Like, oh, you spoke a word that sounded like the name of my daughter. I wish for that to happen. It's like, well, that doesn't make sense. So if they want to criticize anything about the movie, it's a good movie. That doesn't make any sense. That the ending is just like, what? Why would he suddenly decide, okay, I'm in this celestial realm that I've broken into with the hammer, the axe hammer, the Stormbreaker, and now I'm there, and you mentioned love, so love confuses me, like in Robotech, and I must therefore, in Macross. And I must therefore, or like Batman v Superman, or like just the end of Star Wars Kenobi, where she's this kid's the chosen one I've discovered somehow. I don't know how I would know that because it's in the script, and now I've decided to become good or something, or not so bad, just because of that. At least this one had the balls enough to just say, okay, well, we'll just dispatch the bad guy at that point. Unlike in the other stories, but I don't need to go over the whole thing. You don't want to go see it, of course. You don't have to go see it, of course. The Guardians have like about 15 minutes of the movie, maybe. They go on from there. He's gone on adventures. I take it Guardians of the Galaxy 3 takes place before this, and somehow the Necro Sword stuff takes place. That was in the end credits of Eternals took place before this somehow, even though the Eternals is clearly current. Most of it is like current, and then you have the 10 Rings, which isn't connected. So they're disconnected stuff. Cool looking album cover type of thing. Also cover of Marvel story, alternate universe, floating glass sea kind of thing. At the end was this big black shape that's the universe behind it. Turns into the girdle when he does the magic thing. And I won't give away who lives and who dies because that would be messed up. But yeah, it's a. I wouldn't say that it's a dark comedy. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's horror. It's not as much of a horror movie as horror adventure as the last one was, the Madness movie. It's clear that they meant for this movie to take place earlier, and because Mountains of Madness came out first, they sort of went, okay, this is actually, we can't reference that stuff. Like allegedly Kevin Feige telling Sony to dial it back and not try to make a shared universe. I don't think he did, though. It doesn't sound like something Kevin Feige would say. Maybe Taika Waititi might say it, but not Kevin Feige. Yeah, he would say, "Oh, wait a minute." It's the new Phase 4 movies are kind of confusing. Because they're kind of all over the place, which is the problem with a lot of the later stuff, especially a lot of this is Jack Kirby stuff, and and a lot of his stuff from the 70s. I do remember some of his stuff. I was familiar with some of the Eternal stuff, and some of the other. They mixed those up in there too, and it's more familiar with that because there were giant robots in it. But yeah, not so familiar with Thor until they made the movies, the Marvel movies. I knew there was a comic book, but I didn't really look at it. I think I probably saw some of it around. Friends had it. That they also saw more Silver Surfer stuff than that. Celestial Gods, Silver Surfer, that kind of thing. Fantastic Four, X-Men. That's what we did. X-Men. Lots of X-Men stuff. Living Tribunals, Celestials, all that. All the Jack Kirby stuff that came later. Stan Lee stuff's there too, of course. Spider-Man. Spider-Man was more of a friends brothers thing. It wasn't really our thing so much. But the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies were awesome. So yeah. Oh, except for the third one. And then the remakes were okay too. And then the newer one. Yeah, so the problem is you have to set up a certain, villain or whatever, and if you don't, the redemption arc of that guy doesn't make sense. It really doesn't. If he's got the Necro Sword and it's making him evil, the Death Sword. It's literally the Death Sword. Okay, yeah. Then how? Then weren't there other characters in that universe that stopped certain things? I know How It Should Have Ended kind of made fun of that with some of these movies, including their Doctor Strange one. Yeah, but How Doctor Strange 2 Should Have Ended. Come on. How Doctor Strange 2 Should Have Ended. But we don't need to go into that. I don't want to give away the ending, so I'm not going to give away the ending. Thor, Love and Thunder. It was perfectly salvageable, perfectly fine. I know Rotten Tomatoes. The critics think it's somewhere in the mid 60s. The audience thinks it's in the mid 80s. It's in probably the 70s and early 80s in terms of out of 100. It's 3.5 stars. It's fine. I think it's a little more fun than Shang-Chi and the Ten Rings, except for parts of it. Although the Shang-Chi, the Battle with the Dragon, was way cooler than the battle in this one. And the bus battle was cool. But yeah, the Eternals just wasn't what they should have started with. Many of the fans, I agree with him that should have been a miniseries on Disney Plus and not been a movie because there was too much going on. And they showed too much of the giant robot god thing. Showed too much of him early on. They shut to water immediately. It was done. So when he pulls back the sky and appears to them to tell them about the saber thing or tell them about where to find the Merlin thing or whatever the heck it was at the end, the audience checked out a long time ago, and it just didn't work. Moon Knight would have been was all right. My friend liked WandaVision better than I did. Parts of that I could have done without WandaVision. But yeah, I did enjoy most of Moon Knight, I guess. It was all right. It was not as confusing as Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and not as mumbly as Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I did not even bother with the Hawkeye movie. I have no interest in seeing the Hawkeye movie. I'll probably watch Miss Marvel pretty soon, but yeah. So I'm obviously not a corporate shield for Marvel, because why would I say, okay, I didn't like that one. but yeah, so yeah, it's funny that the cage thing is not. That's right there. It's right there. Kids in cages, right there. They even said it. They're riffing on. You think the Trump people would have been, no, you can't make fun of that immigration, fun of that. Like, they didn't say anything about it. It was in the movie. I realize it's aliens on an Asgardian planet, but they're immigrants from space. In Australia somewhere, and they're like, yeah, they're upset about a rock that had a boyfriend once. Priorities. Anyway, so Thor: Love and Thunder, 3.5 stars. Yeah.